Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com.
Hey now, today we're going to take a look at X-Men Mutant Revolution from WizKids. Now, first off, a little bit of backstory. This is essentially a reskinned version of the game Spartacus based on the Starz television show from the publisher Gale Force 9. WizKids essentially got the license to use the system for Spartacus from Gale Force and are using it with this X-Men license that they have access to because they have the license for a lot of the Marvel stuff. You notice it's from like Dice Masters and I don't know, probably some Hero Clicks, things like that. Which really seemed bizarre to me, this whole situation, because I never played Spartacus. I never had an interest in the TV show. I never had an interest in the game, although it does come well regarded. But I knew that in Spartacus it was all about, having heard it described to me many times, especially from the Secret Cabal, it's about you taking control of these leaders who are buying gladiators and having them duke it out in the pit and then bidding on them in order to make the most money possible, possibly training them, getting them weapons. I'm like, well, what does that really have to do with the X-Men? Is this going to be like the Danger Room? Well, no, actually, it's not anything to do with that. It's all about these different factions of X-Men, namely led by Storm, Cyclops, Magneto, and Wolverine. Those are the four players or leaders and factions you can take control of in the game, and they're basically warring with each other, sort of, sometimes working together, most of the time not, in order to get as many mutants to their cause as possible, because they each think that their way is right in order to help the mutants of the Marvel Universe find their way and survive, or even to dominate in the case of Magneto and Cyclops. Now, none of this made sense to me because I haven't read comics in a very long time. I'm not up to date with what's been going on after the whole Avengers versus X-Men thing and the Rise of the Phoenix and Rise of the Phoenix, all that different stuff. But I will say ahead of time, it makes a little more sense than I would have given it credit for, the theme together with this game system. Let's go ahead and take a brief look at how the game is played. Then we're going to come back and I'll tell you what I think. Alright, I'm going to give you a brief run through of X-Men Mutant Revolution. Now, this is the typical setup for the game. I obviously don't have all the different player pieces out here for a total of 4 players. You need a minimum of 3 in order to play it. So you have the board. This is where all of the missions are going to take place. And also, you'll lay out cards for bidding here as well. But all the hexes that you see are only going to be used during the mission phase. Now, each player is going to start off with one of the different mutant schools that they have control of, and as part of that, they're going to get this player board that depicts what their leader's stats are. You have attack, defense, and speed. Now, attack, this is for all the different students and heroes and leaders. Attack, defense, and speed are how many dice you're going to roll when one of those checks is called for. If you have to make an attack, if you have to roll defense against someone else's attack. And then speed is actually how many spaces you're going to be moving, but you also will roll that many dice for your initiative to see who gets to act first during one of the actual mission phases. Now, the game comes with 4 miniatures, but only for the leaders of the game. So here is Storm, and she leads the actual X-Men. And then the other boards that you have Wolverine, and you have, and there's a card that just went bye-bye. Then you have Cyclops, and you have Magneto, and they all come with their own miniatures as well, which I'm sure are probably from some Hero Click set in the past, but without one of the, it drops Magneto. He could not fly in that instance, but without the Hero Clicks base in this particular instance. Now, to give you a further breakdown, first off, every student, every hero, and every leader is going to have some sort of special power. In order to use that power, you have to use your power tokens. At the start of the game, you're going to start off with the maximum amount that they're allowed to have. It'll say power tokens underneath it. That's how many they get to have, along with their action range, just as an aside. But then after you use them, they stay gone until you get to the recover phase of your turn, where you may be able to gain more back. So for instance, Storm's power here is that after rolling to attack or defend, you may spend 1 power token to flip one of the dice to the appropriate side. Whereas you have the hero that you get randomly. There's starting heroes and starting students, which I'm sure I wasn't doing my due diligence in grabbing. Actually, I did in this case. Look at that. But Magic here says that instead of making a normal attack, you may spend a power token to attack every opponent at range 1 or 2 with 3 attack dice. Now, down in the bottom corner of the heroes and the students, you have coins. These are called hope coins. Yes, I know, don't laugh. And you can actually discard heroes and students, that is to say, send them on a secret mission in order to get more hope coins during the course of the game. And the two students I have are two definite B, C, or D listers that I hadn't heard of before, Blindfold and Surge, who have abilities that aren't totally necessary to go through right now. Now, every player, every student, and every hero has a token, which is what you're going to use to represent them should they ever be sent out on missions. That's what the miniatures represent for the leaders. However, it is very difficult to send your leaders out on missions, and that's going to happen very rarely and only for certain missions or if you have no one else to send. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Now, every school also has a charter card, which is a special power that every leader has that they can use when they're not involved in a mission, and only then, in order to help out their students, and they use their own power tokens to do that. So, for instance, Storms here says, press on after one of your heroes or students moves. You can spend one of her power tokens to allow them to move an extra hex. And there's other ones for different things as well. Just to go over the rest of the components real quick, you have mission tokens, which are just really general tokens you'll use for certain missions to represent whatever the mission is telling you to do. Each player also has their own set of school tokens, which again are going to be used to keep track of things during missions. That will tell you if you need to keep track of how many enemies you've killed or how much damage you've dealt, and so on. Each player gets a special bidding dial, which you're going to use whenever you're bidding for recruits or for team leader, or for mission commander, I should say, in which case you'll get this cool mission commander thing. And these are pretty cool because you can bid any amount you want up to, I think, 14. And when you get up to the higher numbers, 10 to 14, you'll actually get special bonus plot cards for bidding that much, assuming you actually win the bid. The way the bidding works, like in any WizKid game that uses one of these tiles, you'll place your bid, put it face down, and everyone reveals simultaneously. But we'll get back to the details of bidding in a minute. There's also these injured tokens. Whenever one of your characters gets injured, you'll put one of these on them. However, on the flip side, they are also triumph tokens. This is if one of your students or heroes or your leader comes back from a mission without having been injured, then you get to put one of these triumph tokens on them, and they'll produce more hope coins for you, which I haven't quite gotten to yet. And then finally, you're going to have 3 dice, red, blue, and green, which represent what this. You put them on the board here, and you're not ever going to roll these. Instead, you set them to whatever the stats are of the hero, student, or leader that you're sending out onto a mission, because not only will that, even though you might think, oh, well, their stats are right here, your stats can actually go down. As you take damage, your stats are going to go down. You have to show that on the board somehow, and that's the easiest way. The rest of these dice are for general purpose rolling, which sounds funny to say. So let me just take you through how the different phases and turns of the game are going to work. The first thing you have to do during the course of the game is upkeep. If coming off of a previous round, you have to recover characters. If any of them are injured, you can remove their injured tokens. You can do this for up to 3 of them. However, if you can mix and match this, but if there's no one that's injured or there's only a couple of people that are injured, you can instead choose to regenerate their power tokens. And again, you can do this with a total of 3 characters: recover or re-energize them, which is just a word I came up with that's not actually in the game. You can then have a chance to advance the revolution. Oh, I suppose I should tell you how you actually win the game. That would be fantastic. You win this game by getting 6 revolution points. That's what this track is. That's the one important thing I forgot to mention off of your player board. I'm very sorry about that. You win the game if you can get the 6 revolution points and maintain that until the end of that current round. If you do so, you can win. If multiple players get to that point, then I think there's some tiebreaker somewhere. Some players, and there's in some instances, you can actually be knocked down in revolution points. So that's why you have to maintain it all the way to the end. The reason why there is a little token on top of the revolution marker here, this is the plot marker, that's because the total revolution that you have determines how many points you have to spend on plots. So let's say I have 4 revolution, I can spend up to 4 points on plots, and I'll keep it track of it that way. Everyone starts at 1 plot point. But going back to the turn order, what advancing the revolution means is that once you have 6 characters, which means a combination of your heroes and leaders and students, during this phase, you can choose to spend a power token off of each of them if they have it to spend, and then you will immediately get to advance the revolution, and you'll be 1 step closer to victory. The next thing you do is acquire hope. Hope coins are what you're going to need in order to bid and get more powerful team throughout the rest of the game. So it's very important that you have those. You automatically gain 1 coin for every student that you have. However, you have to pay a coin for every hero that you have, because I guess it's an upkeep cost of some sort. But you also start the game with 5 hope coins as well, so there is that. And then finally, you set your plot marker to whatever your revolution is. Then you go into the plot phase. Now, every player is going to get 3 plot cards from the plot deck, appropriately enough. And then in turn order, you're going to have a chance to go around the table and either play those plot cards, sometimes having to use plot points in order to do so, or you can choose to discard them in order to get hope coins. So just to give you an example of what some of them are, I'm not going to show you every one, but just to give you a taste, you have the Uncovering Truth, which actually costs 0 plot points. That's what this is up in the top corner. You can discard it for 1 hope coin. You may take up to 3 hope coins from one school that has more revolution points than you do. Some of these directly help you. Some of them hurt other players. This one says discard one of your uninjured students and gain twice that student's hope coin value. Fear and Hatred costs you 4 plot points. Target school with at least 6 hope coins must discard half of its hope coins, rounded up. Class in Session costs 0. Target school gains 1 hope coin for each uninjured student that it possesses. The New Mutants, terrible comic. 4 plot points. Discard the top card of the recruit deck repeatedly until the next student card is revealed. Take that student card and add him or her to your school. It's not a terrible comic. It was okay. 7 plot points. You get to gain. Target school loses a revolution point. The enemy of my enemy. Setting aside differences. 4 plot points. Your school and one other school of your choice gain a revolution point. Ties that bind. Target school with at least 3 uninjured heroes and 3 uninjured students gains 2 revolution points, but that's very, very hard to do. And Devotion to Students is 0. Target school with at least 4 uninjured students gains 1 revolution point. So there's a lot of way to gain and lose revolution, to gain hope coins, lose hope coins, and just totally screw your opponent if possible. So every player is going to have a chance to either play those or discard them for coins, or use any special power that tells you that it can be used during this point in the game. Once you get done with the plot phase, then you get to the recruit phase, and this is where you can actually beef out your team with either more students, more heroes, or training cards. They are all mixed together in this recruit deck, and you're going to have a number of cards set out face down equal to the number of players, and then you're going to flip them over one by one and begin the bidding process for them. Now let me show you a few of the other cards that you might run into. Oh, by the way, there are cancellation cards in the plot deck. I should have showed you those as well. These cards can actually cancel out other event cards as people play from the plot deck. In any case, let's show you some of the cards that you might run into. I'm not going to go through all the different powers on these, but just to give you a taste, because it's pretty much a who's who of the at least modern X-Men universe. You have Beast, Iceman, Angel. Remember, all the heroes are way better stats than the students and have 2 power coins. Dagger, and I never thought of Cloak and Dagger as being part of the mutant universe, but I guess they are. Psylocke, who's fantastic. Shadowcat, another one of my favorite X-Men. Domino, who's a character. Colossus, who is one of my friend's favorite characters. I don't know why. Namor, I also never thought of as a mutant, but I guess he is. Emma Frost and Rogue and Gambit. Then you have some of the B-listers who are the students. You have, and clearly they have worse stats. You have Armor, Mercury, who actually looks pretty cool, X-23, Pixie. Then you have all of the displaced X-Men, who, if you're not familiar with that, Cyclops is kind of being a dick in the comics, so Beast used time travel to bring back the original X-Men lineup team, like their younger selves, to make him feel better? Well, they're here if you want to use them. And then you have training cards. Training cards are like equipment. Each one of your students and heroes can have 1 training card on them, and that's it. And you'll bid on them in the same way. And do notice that these have coins as well. Whenever you trade in a hero, you trade in their training as well. Hero or student, you trade in their training as well and get the total hope coins. So these just give you attribute fees, like add 1 to your speed attribute, add 1 to your attack range. Whenever you use your power, you may add +1 to one number of your choice that is written in the card text. And when rolling for initiative, you can add +4 to your total. So those are just some of the, well, that's most of the types of stuff that you'll find when you're bidding for recruit cards. And how this will work is kind of how I described already. You're going to flip one over, then each player is simultaneously going to bid a number of hope coins using the dial, then everyone flips over at the same time. If you're the clear winner, you get to take the card, you spend your money. Players who lost don't have to spend their money, so it's kind of friendly bids in this case. If you bid a lot of coins, you get an extra plot card as well. If there's a tie between players, you set aside the money that you've already pledged to bid, and then you and the players who are tied bid again until one player clearly outbids the other. And you're going to go through every card and do this over and over again until all of them have either been bid on, or if multiple people, like every people who are either engaged in the bid from the start or who have been tied up to that point, if those people bid 0, then the card goes away permanently. So it's possible that not all 4 cards that have actually been laid out will actually be acquired by anyone. Now, once you get to through the recruitment phase, then you get to the mission phase, which is the meat of the game. First and foremost, you're going to reveal a mission from the top of the deck. I'll show you some of those now without any kind of context, because you have no idea what most of this actually means, so I probably should have done this last. But nevertheless, you have Heroic Clash, and it'll have a little bit of flavor text, like this one says, this is like Avengers versus X-Men. Captain America is trying to get the mutants to surrender. Then you have Hulk Smash. Hulk is on a rampage and just happens to run across the mutants. You have a tournament where these multiple schools are sending students out to have a tournament with each other. Striker's Revenge, where he's sending bombs all across the map. And Apocalypse, who is showing up. Now, the breakdown here, first off, the commander section of the text tells you what the commander gets to do during the game. At the start of each of these missions, you're going to have a chance to bid on the mission commander. Everyone uses their bidding dials in the same way that you used it during the recruitment phase. Whoever wins out on that is going to take the mission commander token, and they get to set the parameters that are sort of depicted on this card. So for instance, for Apocalypse, the commander takes each school may send a leader, hero, or student on a mission. During setup, place 1 mission token, and you get to decide where Apocalypse goes. And then if there's any kind of movement or anything associated with Apocalypse, you get to decide what happens with him. And it's the same way for all the different cards. There's always something that the commander gets to do or have some sort of influence over, so it gives you an edge in the coming battle. Then you have Special, is all the special circumstances of the match, and then Reward, which tells you what you actually get if you're successful in either successful in totally completing the mission or just during the course of it. So for instance, whenever a school, for Apocalypse here, whenever a school scores at least 1 damage against Apocalypse, it gains 2 hope coins. If Apocalypse is defeated, the school that inflicted the most damage gains a revolution point. And that's how the general gist of all these missions go. So if you're Striker, if you defuse the most of Striker's bombs, you'll gain the revolution point, and so on. So how this will work: whoever won Mission Commander is obligated to invite the other schools that are in the game, whether it's 2 or 3 other schools, to send one of their students or heroes onto the mission. If someone refuses, they lose a revolution point, so it's usually in their best interest to do so. You cannot send your leader unless you have no one else to send, or the mission, like the Apocalypse mission, specifically says that you can send your leader. The commander can ask in any order that they want, and when that person decides to actually send somebody, if and when they do, the first person asked is going to put themselves into the number 1 position, and then 2 and 3, you're only putting these here temporarily to keep track of who's in the mission and who's going out first. Then when everyone has either submitted a character to engage in the mission or not, then they get moved into their appropriate spots. So here's where the 1 person goes. Then let's just say Psylocke is out here, and let's say Pixie, because Pixie is something, is going to go here. And then I might just go ahead and send Fuse as well. I'm the number, well, let's say the number 4 character. Then the mission will tell us what mission tokens represent. So let's say this represents the Hulk. So there's the Hulk, and I, as the mission commander, gets to put that there. And then, like I said before, you'll use your school tokens in order to keep track of different things, like the amount of damage you inflict, and so on. Then it gets down to sort of hex-based combat, and it's pretty basic at that. Each player is going to roll whatever character's speed is, and whoever has the higher total is going to get the initiative, and they get to act first. Then you're going to move. You get to move whatever. You have 2 actions. You can move what your movement rating is. You can use a special power that requires an action, or you can make 1 attack against each target. You can never attack the same target more than once, but if there's more than 1 target, you can use 2 attack actions, and you can double up on the other actions as well. And then it's at that point, it's very simply rolling however many, whatever your attack value is, you roll that many dice, hope to get that many hits. Whoever the defender is, whether it's yourself or the mission target, you get to, and by the way, you can't attack the other players. It's just that usually the mission does not call on it. There's no particular benefit for doing so. But if you have to roll defense, you roll whatever your defense value is, and hope. The way that the combat works in this game is pretty interesting. You're always matching up high dice. So if I rolled 6, 4, 2, and the defense rolled 5, 5, 3, you'd sort of match them up, and ties go to the defender, and that's how many points of damage you can potentially score. whenever you meet the end of the mission, whether it's taking down the Hulk or defusing all the bombs or whatever it might be, then you determine who met the mission parameters in order to get the extra revolution point. Oh, and by the way, you get a revolution point just for winning Mission Commander, so that can be quite an important thing as well. And then you see who gets a triumph token for surviving the fight uninjured. There are ways for you to die, because if you take too much damage, every time you take a damage, you have to lower one of your stats, and then if all of your stats get down to 1, you have to start lowering them down to 0, and if 1 stat goes to 0, you're knocked out. If 2 stats go to 0, I think it's something like that. You might get injured, you might get knocked out, or then you might get permanently incapacitated and have to go to the hospital, which means you have to get discarded from the game. So it can be very dangerous to send someone who's too weak out on a mission, but you're only going to get a lot of hope coins and potentially revolution if you do send someone on the mission. And remember, that is the goal. The first player to get to 6 hope coins or 6 revolution points and maintain that until the end of the round is going to be your big winner. That's a very quick and dirty run through of X-Men Revolution. Now, let's get to my final thoughts. Component-wise, everybody loves to bash WizKids, and with good reason if you look at some of their games. But I think that with Mutant Revolution, it's not too bad. There's nothing really amazing. There's 4 miniatures in the game, which are probably reused HeroClix figures, if I was going to guess. There's no clicker on them, but otherwise, yeah. And they probably should have put a clicker on them so you could use them in HeroClix. That would have been nice. They did that with the Batman game, Batman Gotham City strategy game. I digress. I would have loved if they had more miniatures, but there's so many students and heroes in the game that's impossible. It would have been incredibly expensive. But hey, if you're a HeroClix player, you're really set, because you could probably go and grab miniatures for almost every character in the game. Other stuff in the game, the board is kind of bleh, but it had to be generic in order to fit with the theme and what you were doing, so I can understand that. They reuse all the artwork from the Marvel Universe, which is no problem there. It all looks fantastic. And all the little tokens and things are fine. I would say that this is not an overwhelmingly nice production, but there's nothing inherently bad about it either, or low quality control, so it's probably better than most of what WizKids does. Let's talk about that theme for a bit, because I touched on this in the intro. I think that it makes more sense than I would have thought ahead of time, because the way that the missions are structured, you kind of have to help each other if you want to get the most benefit, at least out of most of the missions, because the more and more of, let's say, for instance, the Hulk mission, if everyone can take down the Hulk, then I think you get some sort of extra bonus. And there's a lot of other missions like that too. So you want everyone to pitch in and to succeed. But if they don't, if one person succeeds more than the others, then that's fantastic. And I think that and hopefully that's you. And I think that does fit in with what they're trying to go for as far as these warring's probably the wrong word, but these embattled schools, that's not much better, that are present in the game with Wolverine and Cyclops and Storm and Magneto and their different perspectives on how the mutant world should be run. It does make a little bit of sense in that regard, and how there's a mission commander, and you kind of want your students to be doing the best that you send out on the mission, and not everyone else's. So, okay, I'm on board with that. Having said that, though, it's tough during the course of the game to feel like you're leading the X-Men. You can look down at the cards, and they're great, and the artwork looks great, and you can oh, great, I've got Psylocke on my team. Psylocke's amazing. I love having Psylocke on my team. But other than that, it's not like a super exciting comic book type feel to the game, and I think that the theme suffers for it. I kind of felt detached from it all at a certain point. Now, hold up, you probably think that I'm bashing the game pretty heavily now, but the truth is I like the game quite a bit in spite of the detachment of the theme, because the actual mechanics of how you try to get new recruits, and you're getting these new students, and you're getting these heroes, and then you send them on missions, and the bidding in the game, all of these different things work together really, really well. I mentioned in my intro that I've never played Spartacus, so I cannot compare the two. I don't know what the differences are, but if someone were to bring out Spartacus now, I'd be much more likely to play it, given the good experience that I had with Mutant Revolution. The minimum of 3 players and max of 4 bar is a bit tough. Not being able to play more than 4, but I wish there was some way to play with 2. It makes sense that you can't. But other than that, I think that the game works pretty well. I don't typically like bidding in games. In fact, when I hear there's bidding in a game, I'm like, oh man. And that's really how I'm at this point, but it's not too bad here. If you have a bad round of bidding, Well, that's probably because everyone else spent all their money. And because of that, you're going to have more money for next rounds. And if you're not a total doofus, you'll at least spend it somewhat cautiously. So the bidding is not too brutal here. And there's lots of ways to get those hope coins. Okay, hope coins are stupid. They could have called them anything else. So back to the theme, I wish I had called them hope coins. Nevertheless, the rest of the game is pretty cool as well. Again, it's really cool to get different types of recruits, and they're all a little bit different. They all have special powers. That's one of the huge pluses of the game, is the variability of powers for both the students and the heroes, and the fact that you do have those two different types, and the heroes are a little bit more powerful, but that means you want to cherish them and protect them even more, because it's very interesting how the revolution system works. You can think that it's really easy to get revolution points, but it's not quite that way. First off, the plot cards that enable you to gain a lot of revolution are very hard to pull off because you need to build up your team before you can do that, which is great. I like the encouragement to build up as bigger and better as a team as you can. I'm not a huge fan of the take that elements that some of the plot cards represent, especially like the cancel effects. Now, it's great when you can cancel an effect that's targeting you, but if someone just cancels an event card that you just spent a lot of plot points for and working towards, they're like, canceled, that's a bit of a bummer. But it has to be because there's such a low threshold of revolution points that are necessary, and it's relatively easy to get them. If you win the bid for Mission Commander, you get a revolution point. And when you're the Mission Commander, the odds that you're going to be able to get the extra revolution point at the end, which I think all the mission cards, or at least most of them, give you for meeting whatever the mission requirement is, killing the most Sentinels, dealing the most damage to the Hulk, and so on. Because of that, it's really, really benefits you to be the mission commander, and you can get points in a very quick way. But then everyone else can potentially get a lot of points because they've been saving their hope coins, and they'll have a better round next round, or they'll have a better round next round than they had this round. So that whole thing does balance out to quite a good degree. Now, if I'm talking about faults of the game, aside from the few things that I mentioned already, the game is very long, and there doesn't seem to be a way around this. Someone that I played with who had played Spartacus before knew that there was ways to adjust the length of that game. I didn't notice that in the rulebook of this game, unless it was somewhere in the dregs in the back that I didn't notice. And I don't know how that you would, other than lowering revolution, which might make the game end too anticlimactically. So I think you need to resign yourself to the fact that this is going to be a long game. And that leads back to the fact that the theme can feel a bit detached, because at a certain point, without too many other nice components and without a lot of like storyline things happening other than the text on the plot cards or the mission cards, then it just gets to, okay, bid, okay, boo, I'm going to put this guy here, this token goes here, boom, boom, boom. And it can feel a little bit weird. I do like the special powers of the leaders and the leader miniatures and the charter powers. All of those are great ideas. Although, again, I wish that your leader would be able to come into the forefront more often. The times that you can use your leader, actually put them in the field, are few and far between, which feels weird. I feel like you should probably be out there at all times. You're the leader, right? But I guess you're like the leader who's behind the scenes. Nevertheless, I think that it's a good game. It's just a bit too long. It is a little bit clunky and rough around the edges, but I was pleasantly surprised by it. I did enjoy it. I'll play it again, and I wish that the theme was a bit better, but I think for a licensed property, for a game that doesn't have the words dice and masters in it, this is probably as good as you're going to get for the X-Men property, at least at this point, because it's not an easy franchise to transfer into the board gaming world. And while this definitely wouldn't have been my first pick of a game to re-theme Spartacus, it works surprisingly well. That is X-Men Mutant Revolution from WizKids.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.